Lesson 13 for September 21 through 27, A Community of Servants, read by Dr. Percy Harold. Monday, September 23, A Servant Remnant. The standard definition of the remnant people identified in Bible prophecy is found in Revelation 12:17, those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Also, we have a description in Revelation 14, verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. In the Bible story, these features mark out God's people in the latter stages of Earth's history. But also in the Bible stories, we can find examples of how such a remnant acts, and particularly how such people serve others. Question. Consider the example of Moses in this regard. Read Exodus 32, verses 1 to 14. What is the comparison between Moses in this story and the remnant described in Revelation 12:17 that we've just read? Exodus 32, beginning at verse 1. Now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And Aaron said to them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made a moulded calf. Then they said, This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. Then they rose early on the next day, offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, Go, get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a moulded calf and worshipped it, and sacrificed to it, and said, This is our God, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and indeed it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and I will make of you a great nation. Then Moses pleaded with the Lord his God, and said, Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians speak and say, He brought them out to harm them, to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, and relent from your harm to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self, and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have spoken of I give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. So the Lord relented from the harm which he said he would do to his people. In his anger at the people of Israel, God was threatening to destroy them and transfer the promises given to Abraham that his descendants would become a great nation to Moses and his family, as we read in verse 10. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and I will make of you a great nation. But Moses didn't want that. Instead, Moses had the boldness to argue with God, suggesting that for the Lord to act as he was threatening to act would make him look bad, as he said in verses 11 to 13. Then Moses pleaded with the Lord his God and said, Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians speak and say, He brought them out to harm them, to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, and relent from this harm to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self, and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have spoken of I give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. But then Moses went further, and put himself on the line to urge his case with God. Moses had been struggling to lead these people through the wilderness. They had been complaining and bickering almost from the moment he had led them to freedom. And yet Moses says to God, if you are not able to forgive them, then blot me out of the book you have written, in verse 32 of chapter 32. Moses offered to give up eternity to save those with whom he had shared his journey. What a powerful example of self-sacrificing intercession in behalf of those who don't deserve it, and what a powerful symbol of the entire plan of salvation. In the book Patriarchs and Prophets, page 319, we read, as Moses interceded for Israel, his timidity was lost in his deep interest and love for those for whom he had, in the hands of God, been the means of doing so much. The Lord listened to his pleadings and granted his unselfish prayer. God had proved his servant. He had tested his faithfulness and his love for that unerring, ungrateful people, and nobly had Moses endured the trial. His interest in Israel sprang from no selfish motive. The prosperity of God's chosen people was dearer to him than personal honour, dearer than the privilege of becoming the father of a mighty nation. God was pleased with his faithfulness, his simplicity of heart, and his integrity, and he committed to him, as a faithful shepherd, the great charge of leading Israel to the promised land. So to finish the day, what does this tell us about how, to the degree possible, we should deal with the erring around us? You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. This service is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department, and Christian Services for the Blind. Remember, God is always faithful.